Over 1 million cinema lovers have already subscribed to Film Companion. What are you waiting for? Hit the bell icon and join our film family. Runway 34 is a mashup of a movie, the 2012 Denzel Washington Tauro flight, and a real-life incident. In 2015, a Doha-Kochi Jet Airways flight made a dangerously difficult blind landing. The weather was so poor that the visibility was almost nil and the captain called Mayday. Miraculously, all the passengers survived. Director Ajay Devgn and writers Sandeep, Kewlani and Aamil Keeyan combined these two stories. Ajay plays Captain Vikrant Khanna, who, like Washington's Captain Whitaker, is a rule breaker. But while Whitaker is a tragic mess, an alcoholic who uses cocaine to take off the edge, Vikrant is a cowboy. As he strides into the airport wearing his uniform and shades, the background music chants, "He's the one, he's the alpha man." Vikrant parties hard. He smokes in front of no smoking signs or simply dangles a cigarette between his lips. When someone tells him he can't smoke there, he says with classic tough guy disdain, "Abhi jalaya to nahi." Vikrant might behave badly, but he doesn't actually break any Hindi movie hero rules. The writers make sure to insert dialogue that makes this clear. His mother-in-law says that he's the type of man who would never abandon you in a tough situation. A colleague declares, "Inhe kaun nahi janta, he's an ace pilot." And this comes from a passenger. "He seems to be a gentleman, I trust him." Also, Vikrant has a photographic memory. In short, he's every inch the swaggering, sassy, sexy rogue with a strong moral code, who then finds himself in a life and death situation. A series of events leads him to making a decision to land the plane in the middle of a turbulent storm on runway 34 in Trivandrum. The first half of the film largely takes place on an airplane, and the second at a closed-door trial where Vikrant and co-pilot Tanya are under investigation. As long as the plot is plane-bound, Runway 34 also soars. In places, the slick, heavily digitized visuals come dangerously close to looking like a video game, but Ajay, DOP Aseem Bajaj and editor Dharmendra Sharma constructed tense and riveting drama. The passengers are strictly one note: an elderly lady, a first-time flyer with a baby, YouTuber Carrie Minati playing himself. But the camera moving in and out of the cockpit immerses us into the action. In a nice touch, Vikrant also loses his customary cool expression and experiences vulnerability and fear. The panic is palpable. It's genuinely frightening to see the plane plummeting towards the ground. But this grip loosens in the second half. The action is no longer physical. It's now in the dialogue-bazi and sparring between Vikrant and Narayan Vedant, his nemesis from the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau. This role is played by Amitabh Bachchan, who essentially channels his Parampara Pratishta Anushasan avatar from Mohabbatein. Narayan is a stickler for the rules and is keen to nail Vikrant for narrowingly avoiding disaster. He's also a lover of Shuddh Hindi, so he helpfully translates his own lines into English because no one seems to understand the words he uses. At one point, he shouts at a subordinate, "Incompetence breeds incompetence." But first, he says the same thing in very difficult Hindi. Both halves of this film takes place in enclosed spaces. This isn't a constraint in the first. Ajay uses every inch of the cockpit and plane to heighten the drama. But in the second, the writing trips the storytelling. There are a few clever lines and mic drop moments, but largely the momentum deflates. Ajay resorts to tight close-ups and the focus keeps shifting between foreground and background to showcase the shifting emotions. Narayan shouts often. The conversation becomes about headwinds, tailwinds, and wind pressure. But the tension doesn't accelerate. Intriguingly, the critical question of why Vikrant decided to detour to Trivandrum instead of Bengaluru is hardly addressed. The second half also suffers because Sandeep and Aamil haven't expended enough attention on the supporting characters. Baman Irani, hamming to the hilt, plays a greedy airline owner who's desperate for a merger. There's also a rival airline owner, a woman who smokes a cigar, which is the only character trait she's been given, which also signifies that she's a badass. Meanwhile, Vikrant's wife is a dull and obtuse homemaker who just complains that he doesn't tell her he loves her or even take her out for a date. Rakul Singh does well as the newbie co-pilot, but Runway 34 is pretty much the Ajay Devgn show. Vikrant's character seems to have emerged from the strong, silent, stoic persona that Ajay has honed over 3 decades in film. This is a man whose stride tells the world, don't mess with me. I wish Runway 34 had leaned into Vikrant's fault lines as much as Flight did into Whittaker's. Washington won an Oscar nomination for that performance. But perhaps Hindi cinema isn't ready yet for an A-list superstar to play such a depraved, pathetic character. Still, Runway 34 does break away from Bollywood formula. The film is inconsistent but also ambitious and in places thrilling. You can watch it at a theatre near you. For more reviews like this, subscribe to Film Companion and do check out our website filmcompanion.in.